time. We really do apologize for the technical difficulties that we've been experiencing this morning. I think the heat frazzled our systems, but we appear to be back up and running. Please, for the fourth time, could you let me know if you can hear me? It seems as though we managed to fix the problem. Luckily, the temperatures have dropped nicely, so we're currently sitting on 24 degrees, which is 75 degrees Fahrenheit. It's about half the temperature it was yesterday. Well, you can't really measure temperature in that way, but it is a huge relief to be much cooler, and we do appreciate everybody's understanding. And the hyenas seem to be enjoying it too, because we've got some interesting dynamics occurring here. She's eaten something last night. Her face is full of blood and muck. And so far this morning, she's been restless and grumpy, chasing all of the older hyena cubs away every time they get even vaguely close to the den. She's blocked up her cub completely. He was trying to get out there by the branch, but it's not working. I've only seen one of her cubs. That doesn't mean anything's happened necessarily. It might just mean that the other cub is sleeping in. But she's called a couple of times and it hasn't come out. There's the one. Mommy, you've really blocked up the entrance there. Oh, that's November. Whoops. And November's back in again. Yay! So apparently you can hear me. Let's go through the quick checklist. My name is Jamie. I have Tebs on camera with me this morning. That sentence didn't go according to plan. And you'll be happy to know that Mr. Hendry has recovered from wimping out. Those are not my words, those were his words, just to clarify. And he is also out this morning exploring the wilds of Djuma and Arathusa Game Reserve within the Sabi Sands. Please don't forget to send through your questions or your comments on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email them through to questions@WildEarth.tv. Hello. And that's definitely not, I thought it might be mud all over her face, but that's definitely not, that's blood. She's had a nice meal at some point last night. And she does actually have an incredibly full belly. She's taken the opportunity to have a morning rest and make the cubs' lives ever so slightly difficult. Poor old November at the back there is desperately trying to pull herself out, or himself out. You can do it. Whoops. And gone. What's going to happen now? No. November is going to make a seriously concerted effort at squeezing himself out of the den. He was calling earlier. He's now discovered his voice. That high-pitched whooping contact call. He was calling for Mom, I think. I think it's worked out that if he calls like that, other hyenas respond. He's hoping to get Mom to come and visit. Let's pop over to James Hendry so he can assure you of his health.
Morning everyone, and welcome to the second hyena den of the morning. We're not going to be here for very long. Just a quick apology for all of the technical glitches this morning. We had massive power cuts yesterday. Ooh, here we go. Fascinating stuff, fascinating stuff. Now, I'm struggling to tell what's going on here. What we have is a situation where we've got that mature one that you saw dominating the slightly younger one. lying with the even smaller one. Now, there was some thought from one of our viewers, who is a hyena genius, frankly, that the two young hyenas at each den were in fact the same one, but we've now confirmed that they're not, because there is a young one the same age as that little one on the right-hand side of your picture there at the other den. The other one that you're looking at now was plugging the hole, and here comes another individual. Now, I think that the one that has just arrived now is the one that is lactating. The one behind there, which was blocking the hole, she's been calling into that hole the whole morning, but doesn't seem to be lactating. Does not have swollen teats. And the more dominating one, the one on the left-hand side of your picture, well, no, the one that you saw chasing the one on the left-hand side of the picture, seems, and I'm going to ask our hyena genius if she agrees with me, that to me seems to be who we've been describing as Bella's mother. So there was a male hyena called Ntombela, which means hiding or hide. And she's got those very distinctly notched ears, and so that's who I think that is. Why she was lying in such close proximity with the little fluffy one, which I think is probably 5 months old, maybe 4 or 5 months old. So younger than June, who's at the other den. But I've seen both of these two hyenas calling into the den, sticking their noses down into the hole and going, oh, oh. So what is going on here, I cannot tell you. Then we also had a breeding herd of buffalo walk past, a very small breeding herd. And I say breeding herd simply because I saw a cow. It may have been a cow, bull, and maybe one or two others. So, welcome to it. We're not going to spend too much longer here before we go out and see what else Djuma has to offer us. My name is James. Brian is on camera. And we must also apologise for the lack of a drive last night. I actually rather pathetically came down with some form of heat exhaustion, very distinct from heat stroke, which results in death quite fast. I am not, in fact, dead, which is I'm very pleased about. There's a buffalo behind us there. So that's the story here, everybody, and you are on a live safari. Questions at WildEarthTV if you want to email us or tweet us on hashtag Safari Live on the tweet. And just to keep you posted, like I say, it was beastly hot yesterday, which seemed to cook not only Djuma and me personally, it certainly cooked a lot of our technical stuff up in the mountains. The cell phone signals went down, everything seemed to go down. And so if there are a few technical glitches today, we do apologize for them. We're working on them. Eugenius is up and about and soldering and fixing and cutting and tying and welding and possibly chopping. So hopefully we'll be okay for the rest of the drive. We're going to sit here for another 5 minutes, and then we're going to head off and see what we can see. In the meantime, let's go and see what's happening at what we'll call the central den on Gallagher Shortcut. Did you hear that?
What I hadn't realised up until this point is actually how close James's den is to ours. I suppose, I guessed rationally I knew that it was just on the other side of this drainage line. But I could hear all of the squealing and greeting that came from the hyenas that moved from this den towards James's. So he's really not far away. It's probably about maybe 200 meters directly east of where I'm sitting now. Not much has changed here. Corky is still blocking up the den. November hasn't made an appearance since his failed attempt at squeezing out behind the branch. I think one of the twins is feeding, but it's hard to see in the way that Corky's lying. Apparently there's lots of vultures on Buffelshoek, Hook, which is where I think these guys have been wandering. She does look a little bit gremlin-like, with her face covered in muck and those ears at that angle. One of my favorite questions has come through from Sandblaster. So Sandblaster, you wanted to know if hyenas ever bring food or bits of a kill back to the den. The reason that I love that question is because, in theory, if you read books on animal behavior, no, spotted hyenas do not. And it's something that's quite unique to brown hyenas. That's the theory. In practice, I can promise you, because I've seen it regularly happen, that yes, they do. Spotted hyenas do bring food back to the den site, particularly not really when the cubs are this small brown age, but when they start to reach about 4 or 5 months of age, now the spotted hyena mothers do bring bits of the kill back, legs and heads and so on. I've seen and followed a female that dragged half an impala carcass, which is no mean feat. She dragged it about 2 kilometers to her cubs, and at that stage they were too young to actually eat it, and it was more almost like she was first of all keeping it there for herself for a meal for later, but also almost introducing them to the idea of eating meat, giving them something to investigate and explore. And the older the cubs get, the more that the hyenas do this. So it does mean that they mess up the den faster. So we've spoken a lot about hyenas moving from den site to den site. Obviously the cubs at this small age defecate and urinate inside the den on a fairly regular basis, but they're quite tiny. So the build-up of muck and parasites doesn't happen quite as fast, and they tend to stay a little bit longer. But as the cubs get older and there's more food brought back, the parasite build-up increases much faster, and they move fairly regularly. I wonder what prompted the opening of that den. Oh, how beautiful. Well done, Tibbs. Pygmy kingfisher. He's always here now. Amazing how they are creatures of habit. But the hyenas are calling. Let's go to James.
Okay, everybody, and we were about to leave, and then they started calling, kind of looking around. There, you can hear it. Oh, mournful sound. Something is going on here. Maybe just chasing those doves that flew out of the way, but she seems to be looking around. There comes the sun. It's a very distressing sight. Most of the time, of course, we rejoice in the arrival of the sun. After yesterday, where the sun spent an extended holiday somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy, I don't think we'd be too sad. The street is that the weather will give us some relief today. It'll be a bit cooler than normal. Let's just watch what's going on here. Fascinating stuff, as always. Maybe there's a leopard walking by. Maybe there's a lion. I think that little one gave itself a fright while it was chasing those doves. Debbie, yes, they probably would. You want to know if buffalo would attack hyena like they would lion or leopard. Debbie, I think they would, but not, perhaps not quite as enthusiastically. I think it would depend on their experience, it would depend on the area. They won't attack leopards, they'll kind of tell them to get out of the way. So we watched a buffalo chasing Karula away the other day. But he was just kind of, he'd get close to her, and then as soon as she moved off, he'd leave her alone. Lions, they get very upset with. They get deeply, deeply upset when they see lions. And I think the hyena response would be quite similar to the leopard one. In an area where they are hunted more by hyenas, you may well find that they become more irritated. Right, cubs out at the other den, let's go across there.
And Corky has managed to pull herself out of the den, looking, I think, as many of us feel after the festive season. She is very round and accompanied by one little tottering member of her family, who I don't think was fully finished with breakfast and is a little bit unimpressed at the sudden absence of his milk supply. At least managed to have a fairly good feed. November has now also popped his head out of the den and is watching the goings-on, somewhat enviously. You might be imagining it, or maybe being a little bit too anthropomorphic there, but I think was also feeling a little bit hungry and waiting for Mom with eager anticipation to come and feed him. And of course, hyenas don't feed each other's cubs, so November has no chance of a meal from Corky. Might get a sniff or a lick, but that's about as far as it will go. And just to clarify what I said earlier about the bringing food home to the dens, it's not a new discovery that I've made personally. It's something that biologists are slowly starting to realize and to write about, and behavioral scientists. So it's not a magical discovery. But it just is interesting that it's taken so long to get to that point of understanding the way that spotted hyenas work. And also bear in mind that different clans of animals will behave differently in different places. So we speak from observation largely based around the low veld area, which is where we are now. And that does not mean that hyenas do not behave differently, ever so slightly, in, for example, the Kalahari or in Eastern Africa. A lot of the behavior is evolved around the environment in which the animal lives, and that applies for all of the creatures that we see out here. Our behavioral observations come from quite an area-specific base in this particular circumstance. I made it out, little one. Good morning. And that little phallic shape suggests to me it's a male, slightly pinched end towards the tip. It's very difficult to tell when they are this age. Oh, pounce. I thought the little twin was going to launch itself. Both Brian and Kat, you were wondering if the hyena den connects, or the two hyena dens connect. No, not as far as I can tell. They're on the other side of drainage lines, so they're on opposite ends of a drainage line, which would keep them separate. I did mention that they were close, but they're not quite that close. So they won't be connected. There will be a very clear path that moves between them. cousins playing. Bethany, who's watching in Virginia, just chatting a bit about the structure of hyena dens. You pounced. You said that, or you were wondering, because you thought that the hyena dens were connected, or the tunnels were connected between the various entrances, but the fact that November was stuck in one spot or couldn't get out of that particular spot maybe means that they're not. They are connected. There are tunnels between them. I just think that November wasn't feeling brave enough to go all the way around. It possibly hadn't really worked out that that was a good idea. There's still a lot of learning going on in these little cubs' heads, but I have seen them move from one entrance to the other underground, so they are connected. You can see the size difference that a month makes, but that's not a deterrent to stop the younger one from starting a game. Now that it's had its fill. Oh, might have bitten off. Oopsie. Might have bitten off more than you can chew there, little one. November's a lot bigger than you. Ah, got you. Got you. What you gonna do now? Oh, lost interest. And much like puppies or kittens, that grip at the back of the neck very often has a calming effect on these cubs. It's instinct within them, but we've seen it with all cubs and kittens that they immediately go floppy. Whoops. Oh, it's a tough old world being a hyena cub, but at least you've got company to play with. Using the weight to his advantage. Now standing on the younger cub. I can only imagine how sharp those teeth are. Didn't even realize there was a hole there at all. I guess I should have known. Hands up again. And Dylan is watching in Iowa. We've chatted a lot about hyena hierarchy and the way that it works. And you were wondering that what happens when a matriarch passes away, and if the other hyenas automatically know who takes over, or whether or not there is some kind of process that they have to follow. I can only give you supposition work at this point. I would suggest that her eldest daughter would be one of the dominant members of the line, so a natural replacement for her. And that's, if you also find with cubs of matriarchs that have then grown up, they are bigger and stronger, and they've inherited their mother's status, so they automatically take on a dominant position within the clan, and they've also had the best access to food throughout their lives, so there's a chance that they're going to be bigger and stronger. That's not always the case though, and we know that coups do happen. So at the hyena clan, not everyone is related. You sometimes get up to 2, 3, 4 different genetic lines, so mothers and their daughters tumbling down there. A hyena den is the perfect jungle gym. It's a safe haven and a bolt hole. It also provides everything you need for a good game, including a high point at which to ambush your cousin, possibly your cousin. So yes, they have different matrilineal lines, different unrelated hyenas, and sometimes what does happen is if the lower ranking females start, so the mothers and the daughters start to outnumber the higher ranking females, coordination this morning, then there is the possibility that there will be a fight. And fights do happen, internal fights do happen amongst spotted hyenas. They're a lot more aggressive than, for example, wild dogs, if we wanted to compare social structures. They do happen, and sometimes that results in a coup in which the lower ranking females then become higher ranking and vice versa. In terms of what happens when the matriarch dies, I think it depends on the condition of the clan and what's happening in that clan at the moment. I can't give you a more definite answer than that. Something that it has been recorded and studied before, but I think will probably yield different results depending on where you are and what's going on in that clan at the time of the matriarch's death, or in fact how she dies. If she starts to get really old, you sometimes see her daughters stepping into her place before her death. So there's a natural, steady takeover, if that makes sense, a progressive takeover. And that particular patch of grass at the moment must smell amazing. They've all been anal pasting, every member of the clan this morning. Safari Dean, days of our hyenas, our hyena den. It is a very, oh, somebody's got a thorn, I think. Oh no, maybe not. Yes, definitely a soap opera drama that plays out here every morning. And there are two central characters there. You can't help but become fairly attached to the characters that we start to see developing. That's why I love these live safaris. You get to know them, and especially when you spend as much time as we do around them. Shoulder charged. Yeah. Mischief. Got your ear. In the highest spirits. It must have been a fairly unpleasant afternoon yesterday for them as well, in those hot burrows, and I bet they do get hot, although at least shady. They must be reveling in this change in temperature. And as I said, that hyena, that patch of grass must be absolutely covered in anal paste, and I'm certainly feeling as though I can smell it. There's a distinct, I don't know how to describe it, it's a combination of wet dog and something musky wafting over us. Not the cleanest creatures in the world. Definitely cute and definitely smart, but not the most hygienic. Better be careful, November. Corky's been grumpy today. And if that one starts to squeal, she will come racing over to see what's happening. One taking advantage of the natural bumps in the termite mound to give it a height advantage. The other wonderful thing about spending as much time with these hyenas is we get to really age them very accurately. So in future, if we ever see cubs of these ages, we'll be able to know exactly how old they are, or guess roughly how old they are. And I'm starting to think that you shouldn't have favorites, but I'm starting to think that November might be a special hyena. He is so playful, and the contact calling that he's demonstrated has been absolutely hilarious. Richard, welcome to our sunrise safari. Richard is fairly new to our live drives. We offer a big welcome and hope that you stick with us for the future. We do go out twice a day, every day. Richard, you were wondering how the females become the matriarchs. It's a bit of a complex question, and it sort of links back to the previous question about what happens when a matriarch dies. So hyenas have quite complex social structures where the cubs inherit the social status of their mothers. Females are automatically bigger and stronger than the males, so they inevitably inherit a higher status as they do. So the little cubs are essentially, if they're born to the matriarch, they are born princesses. And I couldn't begin to tell you how the first matriarch came into being. I can only tell you how the system continues. So she's usually one of the oldest females, and she's usually one of the largest females. And quite often what happens is, or quite possibly what happens, is that it's a female that has wandered off on her own and started her own clan. That does occasionally happen. Sometimes clans get too big and they split, or a female gets separated from the rest of her family. And what she'll do is she'll start her own line and her own clan and then automatically become the matriarch. That's one possible scenario in which a female becomes the matriarch, and then it continues from there. And hyenas, as I said, aren't necessarily related, so she might accept other females into her particular area. It works to their advantage because there's safety in numbers, and the more clan members you have, the better it will be for example, challenging lions to take away their kill, or even fending off rival groups. There are occasional dominance displays, so that's why the matriarch tends to be the biggest and most aggressive member of the group. Our view is not spectacular at the moment, so let's have a look at James, or head over to James rather, who has found some painted horses for you.
Hello everybody, here is some woodland for you to look at. There was a zebra there. There are a few zebras still there. I'm just going to move around the corner and see if we can't get a view. There was also an enormous pig, an enormous warthog wandering through the bush, and quite confiding. He was quite pleased to see us. He greeted us fondly. I'm just shielding my eyes from the viciousness of the early morning sun. Hello, Gen B. While we look at these zebras, you have noticed that I have a very severe injury underneath my left eye, and you want to know what happened to me there. Gen B, I'd love to tell you an exotic story of how I wrestled a leopard to the ground, or perhaps was set upon by an African wildcat during the course of the night that climbed into my room. I cannot tell you that. This is interesting. What I can tell you, though, is that while I was taking down the Christmas tree, which one must do on the 6th of January, it attacked me and viciously cut me underneath my left eye. The zebra's been remarkably confiding to us. It's wonderful. I wonder what he spotted. He smelled something, perhaps. He's the stallion, and those will be his wives behind him, and perhaps a few of his offspring. Certainly one at the back is his offspring. He's a magnificent fellow. It seems to be he may have spotted something. I'm not sure. He's looking obviously very interestedly to the north. The wind is coming from behind him, so he won't be able to smell anything looking from the direction which he's looking. But he's in great condition. Look at him. Zebra, of course, always fat, but when they lose condition, their manes start to lie down because they're held upright by fat reserves in the neck. But they're all very shiny and fat-looking. So clearly the drought has not taken its toll on them at all. Wonderful little kinship group of zebras. And I think, like equids throughout the world, with the exception of the Grevy zebra, they live in this kind of harem society where there's a dominant stallion and his wives and their attendant offspring. And then when he gets old, he will be challenged for his harem, possibly, he will be challenged throughout his life for his daughters. So his daughters who are lurking around at home, looking for suitors, he will be challenged by those suitors. And if they do sufficient... There's an elephant, that's what he's looking at. Well spotted, Brian. Just as that elephant comes towards us, a very cross elephant running, and I shouted at a kudu. Here they come. I'm just going to stay here and let this play out. I don't want to... The zebras generally don't like to be around the vehicles, so let's just watch what happens here. And a lovely comment from Pimped on YouTube. Fascinating YouTube name, that, Pimped. Well, Pimped, yes, as you correctly say, dodge trees all day long, keep my money maker perfectly blemish-free, and then I'm attacked by a recalcitrant Christmas tree. That is the way of things, Pimped. I've broken 2 limbs in my life, both times, both wrists, neither of them doing anything that could be described as an exotic or noble cause. So yes, major injuries tend to be from general stupidity, and in my case, that is the case. All right, let's try and see if we can't get a little bit closer to those elephants. We'll try and parallel with the zebra. Heads, everyone. You don't want to get a scratch on your eye like mine. It's a very irritated elephant here. Okay, let's go back to Jamie, see what she's doing with the hyenas, and I'll keep you posted here.
Corky's up. I know it's very difficult to see her behind the buffalo thorn, but she's been looking quite intently oh, it's impala, that's what she's looking at. There's a whole herd of impala that just walked through. They're in very thick bush, so I'm not going to ask Tebs to show you. It was just interesting to see Corky's reaction, but the cubs are oblivious, which also goes to show why it's so important that they spend time in the den when the adults are away. And their senses and their perception of things outside of their narrow little world are not fully developed yet. So in that case, they remained completely unaware that an entire herd of impala walked by. Far too distracted with more important things like pretending to be adults and playing, ambushing each other. Gotta hand it to the little one. Not afraid to tackle its older companion. And it never ends well. It ends up being pinned, trapped by teeth. Or maybe not. Still no sign of the second cub, the second twin. I think it's decided to have a lion. Corky's still staring off in the direction of the impala. I think very soon it will be time for us to leave the hyena den, although it has provided us with endless entertainment. It is always possible that we will return in the next few days. They've been so marvelously special. I know that James has some pachyderms to show you. I'm going to restart our vehicle and see what other wonders I can find to show you.
Right, everybody, we're here with a little herd of elephants, and this is a young bull. He's a little bit irritated by life, and there's a little one coming from behind us at great speed, full charge. I would be absolutely terrified were he sort of 15 years older. But a youngster like that is just amusing. When they get cross, they get playful. He's been shouting the odds, throwing his insubstantial weight around. This one is also young. And as I was saying to him just before you came live, he's going to have to get a lot bigger. Might be a she, actually. Might be a young cow. She's also going to have to get a lot bigger before I will depart in terror. There are some others. This is not the only representatives of the herd. There's some others to the front or to the left of your screen. So we'll watch them quite carefully, because if there are some in the herd that are a little bit upset, often there are a few in the herd that are a little upset. Yes, hello. She's about 10 meters from us, 30 feet. I think a young bull. It is a little difficult to tell. She's got he has got quite a square forehead, but no swelling between the front legs, which I think she would have. And normally the young cows are not playful like the young bulls like this. They don't kind of come and investigate the vehicles. They just get on with their lives within the herd. Just try and sneak forward a little bit. I just know that if I start the engine, he's going to run away. Let me just wait here. Beautiful light on them. Picking very selectively the little bits of green that there are in the bush. I think for a long time people thought elephants were fairly indiscriminate feeders, that they just walked about the place eating everything they could, but they're actually highly selective. And we had a question yesterday about how they know where water is. Do they smell it, or do they feel it, or how do they know what's going on? And I think a lot of the time they're taught where water is, and likewise, I think the older females in the herd will teach them what to eat, when to eat it, where the best spots for certain plants are. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if one day someone were to make a discovery that elephants self-medicated, and perhaps other animals, but elephants self-medicated themselves with different plants in order to ward off disease and parasites. Beautiful. Just to keep you posted, I know a lot of you are worried about the Nkuhuma Pride, their whereabouts and how they're doing with their lives. They seem to be around. They went into Kruger the other day from Nkoro, which is southeast of us. Then there were reports of their tracks coming in and out of Buffelshoek on the far eastern side of Buffelshoek. So they're around there. They seem to be okay. I don't know why they won't come back here. Certainly we haven't seen the Birmingham boys here for eons. They've been around in the south. And just to reiterate to you, if you ever do come to visit Djuma or Arathusa, of course your traversing area will be a lot larger than the Wild Earth traversing area. And so with Taxon or Aubrey or one of the other guides, you'll definitely see amazing lions. But the lions will come back here eventually, and how it is in Buffelshoek now, so shall it be here in Djuma. I'm just going to lift forward a little bit. Hello, Siberia. You would like to know about zebras and how long they live. You see, it seems to you that they live lives that are as fulfilled as giraffe and elephant. I'd love to know what you meant by fulfilled. I think that's quite a nice way to put it. Siberia, I think you'll find a zebra, much like similar-sized animals in the bush here, is potentially able to live to 20 years around in captivity. I think out here they'd be lucky to get beyond 15 or 16, but maybe a little bit older than that, depending on the stress levels. And it's quite nice there, Brian. Can you see the hairs on the top of that little one just shining in the rising sun? They have little hairs when they're little like that. Now, I would say these are siblings. I don't think that they are in any way related as mother and son. I think this is a young bull in front of us, but it's, like I say, difficult to say. Now Scorpion 73, good morning to you. You say there's some ticks behind her ears. I didn't see them, Brian, did you see them? Scorpion, ticks don't seem to affect elephants as much as they do other animals. They definitely do get them. Because I think their skins are so thick, I think it's difficult for a tick to get in there and bite a blood vessel. So I'm not sure, Scorpion. Let me try and have a look. Yeah, as Jerry says, it could have been dried caking mud, but let me just have a quick look. She's being very investigative. He is being very investigative. Then there's a big cow in front of us, which we're not going to show you at the moment, but she will probably be the matriarch of this herd. Oh, there's one with a floppy ear. You see that, Brian? There's one with a very, very floppy ear. Now that's a condition, not the same as floppy trunk syndrome, but floppy ear will mean that the cartilage in that ear is broken and no longer functional. And I don't believe that it will ever function again quite properly. Isn't that interesting? May have been born like that, maybe an injury, won't affect her life too much. Paul, you say that they say that elephants have the best sense of smell of any mammal. Paul, I'm not convinced of that. I think you'll find that things like hyena probably have a sense of smell maybe a bit stronger than elephants. I'm not sure. And then Scorpion, I did look behind her ear, and I'm not seeing a great deal of ticks. I'm seeing lots of caked mud, though. There's the matriarch going across the road now. Big cow. Hello, Nick Cringe. This might be the first time we've heard from you, and if it is, thank you for getting hold of us. It's really good to hear from you. Look at this beautiful elephant. Hello. Ah, right, Nikunj. Nikunj, I think that's how we pronounce your name. You're still a new viewer, lovely to hear from you. And you want to know about elephants and why it is that you've been watching for a few days and you say at sunset, elephants toss mud all over themselves. Nick, what you'll find is during the heat of the day, often elephants will be in the deep shade, feeding and snoozing and sleeping. And then as it cools down, they will come out and go towards water holes where they might swim, they might drink, and they might also throw mud on themselves just to cool down. So just to cool down a bit, and they cover themselves in mud to get rid of the parasites and that sort of thing. So, Nick, the reason they do it at sunset is because most of the heat of the day is spent sitting in the shade. And then they'll come out around in the evening to do that kind of mud throwing and drinking and having a swim, perhaps. I think also, Nick, I mean, they will do it during the middle of the day, but remember, we don't drive around in the middle of the day, and so we don't often see it. I think if you watch the Djuma Dam cam often enough, you would absolutely see them doing that mud tossing sometimes during the middle of the day. Right. Let's go a little bit forward and see if we can't get another view of them. I'm not going to chase them into the thick bush. They've been very kind to let us view them from where they are. With this car trying to sneak forward and roll and jigger as possible. There we go. I think that's the best view we're going to get at the moment. A few more in front of us, one of them about to cross the road. And of course, there's a substantial amount of gas being produced by the elephants from hindgut fermentation vat that sits in the back of the elephant's stomach. And every so often you will hear them going, well, I'm not going to make the sound effects, you can imagine, but they can be fairly flatulent. And I've just heard one of these two elephants releasing some of the pressure. I cannot tell you what a distinct pleasure it is to have a cool breeze at our backs and a thick bank of clouds covering the sun. Sneak forward again. Oh, here's one of these unanswerable questions that will hopefully be answered by one of our clever viewers. Brian, a wonderful question about how much an elephant can lift with its trunk is a huge thing to our right here, Brian. That is a big cow. Brian, I don't know how much an elephant can lift with its trunk. I'm just going to be very quiet now as this car walks behind us. She is enormous. Ooh. That's wonderful. I wish you could see the smile on this Brian's face right now. I'm sure you noticed how my voice changed, and completely involuntarily as I was yakking away, and suddenly this behemoth appeared, and it's a respectful time. Wonderful. And at no stage did she look at us with any kind of irritation. She was watching us, just making sure that we weren't a threat, and then she walked off. So, Brian, I don't know how much a full-grown elephant could lift with its trunk. I've seen them pick up fairly heavy logs of sort of maybe 20 or 30 kilograms. That doesn't seem like very much, though. And Now, Brian, I don't know. If anyone has any answers for that, please send them through. #SafariLive, questions at WildEarthTV, but I'm not sure. There is a source in the final control. I'm not sure what the source is. It says 300 kilograms with the trunk. That seems like an absolutely massive amount. I've certainly never seen an elephant bull try and lift that kind of weight. But yes, they are. I mean, you do see them moving trees. You see them picking up or sort of pulling trees, certainly. So yeah, could well be 300 kilograms. 9 pounds, that is about 700 pounds. Huge amount. Oh, there we go, Anna. Brilliant point. Of course, the Indian elephants or the Asian elephant are often put to work in the forests of India, and they certainly do pick up logs, teak logs, move them about the place. So yeah, 300 kilograms, probably quite good. Now, I suspect, like most mammals, if they're continuously picking up logs, I suspect their trunks probably get stronger and they get conditioned to it, and then they can probably pick up a bit more. But yeah, I haven't ever thought of that. That's 300 kilos is a huge mass to pick up with your nose. I certainly couldn't pick that up with my nose. All right, wonderful elephant herd. Let's press on, see what we can find. So we're right now about to pop out on the little sort of cut line. Georgie, you've also found that 300 kilograms seems to be around about the limit for an elephant bull to pick up with his trunk. So thank you for that. Lots of hyena tracks. And as I often say, that's why this job is such a fantastic guiding job, because we learn so much all the time and often from our viewers. So thank you for your efforts on that score, for educating me as we drive along. Macy, you want to know, and it's a very valid question, about how these elephants differ from their Indian counterparts in Asia. They differ quite substantially. First of all, from a biological point of view, they are unrelated. Well, they're not unrelated, they're in the same family, but they are not the same genus, which means that they couldn't possibly interbreed with each other. So that's quite interesting. And then what you find is that, obvious differences would be that in Indian elephants, the cows don't have tusks. They are smaller. They have got much smaller ears because they don't need the cooling effect of the ears, because they live in shade most of the time, so they don't spend as much time exposed to the sun as our elephants do. And what else would the differences be, Brian? Those are the main differences. They also don't have 2 fingers on the end of the trunk. Our elephants have got two fingers, one at the front and one at the back of the trunk, and those ones just have one, I think, that folds over the top. It's prehensile, like ours are. And those are the major differences. They also tend to be slightly less irritated by human presence, the Asian elephant. And so they have been domesticated more successfully than the African version. You can domesticate an African elephant, but it's certainly not as easy a process. And also, apparently, African elephants would be fairly hopeless for the kind of work that Indian elephants do, because they need to eat so much. I think their digestive systems are possibly less efficient than an Indian elephant's, simply because they live in an environment where the food is not as rich in nutrients. And so that means that they have to eat for longer periods of the day. Marianne, you say if there is some form of reincarnation, you'd like to come back as an elephant cow. You can sit with your family all day and eat, basically, to your heart's content. all day long. And you live a long life. Yes, I think that's not a bad option at all. And people often say, what animal would you like to be? And if I had to pick a mammal, I think I would probably take an elephant bull. Chris Rogue, you reckon that the mood of an elephant could also affect its ability to lift and how much it could lift? Yeah, I'm sure it would. I mean, certainly an adrenaline surge in a human being results in quite astonishing feats of strength that people would never be able to repeat were they not sort of coursing with adrenaline. So I'm sure the same would apply to elephants. I'm sure they'd be more willing to pick up heavier things if they were very irritated. Ryan's actually putting a jacket on, everyone. I'm going to revel in the slight goosebumps I'm getting on my arms. Hello, Susan in Colorado. And while we drive down this cut line here, Brian, you just keep an eye out for animals, will you? You want to know how elephants make the noises that they do. Well, they make a few different kinds of noises, of course, and the most obvious one is the screaming. So they can scream from the voice box. They've got a large voice box, so you'll often hear walking through the bush, you'll hear that, and that's them shouting at each other. It's often the young ones getting irritated, and that comes from the larynx. And then they will trumpet, of course, they can trumpet, and that's just blowing air through the nose at a great volume. And that will sound like a sort of very loud, streperous trumpet. And then, of course, there are the more subtle rumbling sounds that they make. And for a long time, people thought that those were made through the stomach. They are not. They are made through the vocal cords, through the voice box. And because the voice box is so much larger than ours, of course, they can make much deeper sounds, much more deep infrasonic sounds. And so that all comes from the larynx or the vocal box, and that's how they make all their sounds. They make them at different times and different reasons. I don't think we're scratching the surface of understanding what those low rumblings, infrasonic rumbles, sometimes so low that we can't even hear them. And I'm sure they resonate through chambers in the body, you know, that make them sort of amplify the sound and send the sound out. But we don't understand, I don't think, half of what they're saying to each other with those low infrasonic rumbles. So that's the most subtle stuff. And to us, there are some buffalo. Hello, beefies. To us, those sounds sound a bit like sort of... I've no doubt that to the elephants themselves, that sounds completely different, and that sound that we can hear, that we can kind of imitate, is only the very, very top end or the highest frequency of those infrasonic rumbles that they make. And they use those communications for different times and different moods. I think there's a lot of just sort of chatting between the two. So often you can see elephants, when the matriarch makes that call, they stop what they're doing, they listen, they look, and then they move off in one direction. Maybe she gives the order to go to have a drink or to a new patch of grazing or whatever the case may be. And then they'll scream. Sometimes they'll shout from the voice box. The youngsters, like I said, when they're frustrated, they might trumpet when they're irritated, and they will often scream also if they're actually attacking, if they are charging. Anna Marie, nice question. Can animals get heat stroke, basically? Can they overheat? Yes, they can, sure, even though they have evolved in these areas. It's an interesting discussion. Certainly there are a lot of desert-adapted animals that are more capable of maintaining heat balance than, say, some of the animals out here. So you won't find buffalo in true desert. You will find gemsbok, which you don't find here, or oryx in true desert. You won't find springbok here, but you do find them in true desert, and likewise impala. You don't find them in the desert, but you find them here. So some animals are better adapted to losing heat than others. And what's interesting is that one of the most efficient animals, or one of the animals that loses heat most efficiently is the human being. And of course, Europeans in Africa, or Europeans in climates where there is a great deal of sun, like here, I mean, our kind of white skin is definitely not adapted sufficiently to surviving without support from either clothing or sunscreens and that sort of thing, and I think that makes us a lot hotter. But black skin out here is fantastic for losing heat and for rejecting the sun's rays. So we're very good normally at getting rid of heat. And my little episode yesterday, which is very distinct from heat exhaustion or heat stress, is very different from heat stroke. Heat stroke is when you go into organ failure and you die, basically, unless you get very medical attention very soon. Heat exhaustion or heat stress is just brought about by the core body temperature going up for some reason. And normally animals are able to avoid it, and as humans we're also normally able to avoid it. And sometimes it's just a little trigger that sets it off. Nice question. Thank you, Anna Marie. As you can see the way those buffalo are orientated to the sun. Well, I mean, there's no sun at the moment, but they are, I mean, the surface area of that buffalo, exposed to the sun compared to the surface area of a human being standing next to that buffalo, is much higher. So the buffalo, because they are standing horizontally versus vertically, are actually far more exposed to the midday sun than a human being would be. We're going to carry on driving. And sandblaster, what a wonderful question. You've obviously been studying the maps. That's something I really love to do. And you say you've noticed that Djuma is only about 100 miles or 160 kilometers from the sea. And do any animals make the trek to and from the sea? No, they don't. And that's simply because there's an international border between us and there. And the entire outside of the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, which does go into Mozambique, is in fact fenced. So animals cannot get to the sea. They're also, between the fence and the sea, which isn't a very big distance, there are also huge numbers of people living there, and human settlement, of course, doesn't make for great migration route for large herds of animals. I think in the past, absolutely, you'd find that animals did make that trek from the coast all the way to the mountains of the Drakensberg, because we're basically into the coastal plain here. From here all the way into Mozambique, there's the bump of the Lubombo Mountains, I suppose, but it is a fairly gentle, undulating topography from here. Oh, let's quickly head across to Jamie. She's got some interesting wildebeest. We'll carry on here.
For you.
Well, this wildebeest is looking fabulous. That is the best wildebeest wig I have ever seen. Tibbs has nicknamed it the Rasta wildebeest. It's incredible. It's been thrashing the ground with her horns, rubbing her glands on the ground, and as a consequence has acquired a fabulous hat, or wig, I suppose. It's probably a wig, definitely a blonde wig. Wow. I'm so surprised she hasn't shaken that off, or maybe she's tried to. There have been suggestions that it looks like an emo wildebeest with its flick over the eye. That can't be terribly appealing. It can't be comfortable for her. Must really blinker the one side of her vision and roll back and reposition so that we can stay with her. Well, I must say, that's a new one for me. Absolutely fabulous, darling. You look gorgeous. Slightly uneven. And it is so wonderful to be chilly, and I think that the wildebeest are loving it. And yes, indeed, the latest wildebeest fashion. I'm terribly impressed. I think she looks. Actually, she looks ridiculous, but don't tell her that. Keep quiet, because I think she looks fabulous. I think she thinks she looks fabulous. We've actually got a nice group of animals that are gathering here. Our wildebeest herd and their calves. And as I said, they're also really enjoying the lower temperatures. I mentioned it yesterday. For those of you who are concerned about the Djuma pan, please do not be. They are attempting. There's a big crack in the wall, and there is a terrible drought. It is not because they don't want to pump the water, it's just that they're wasting hundreds of gallons a day at the moment because it's falling through the cracks. And with Peter the pond hippo there, it means that they can't repair it. Here's our lady, our fabulous lady. So as soon as possible, they will be pumping the pan again. There is access for the animals. There is water for the animals. They're constructing another pan. And in fact, that I think is just up further. I'll drive past it in a moment and show you where there'll be other water. There's also water at Galago. So the animals are not without access to water. Hey, look at you. Shame, girl. Why don't you shake your head and get rid of that? I can only think that she's enjoying it. Endlessly entertaining. I wonder what the zebras think. All the calves rushing forward. They're very appealing at that age. Sandra Evans, you suggested that she's undercover. Well, we won't give her secret away. We'll keep it quiet. Maybe she thinks she's really camouflaged. I'm a tree, I'm a tree, I'm a grass, I'm a patch of grass, I'm a patch of grass. I'm not a wildebeest at all. Identity crisis. There is watching in Canada. You suggested that it is a straw hat to help her beat the heat. Perhaps we've found the world's smartest wildebeest who has acquired some sun protection. I quite like that idea. Soon all the other wildebeest will be doing it too. She is a trendsetter. I've actually lost track of her. I think she's moved down on the pan. How did she get there? Is that a different one? Yeah. That's a different one. Okay, so the trend is catching on. I thought for a moment I'd lost my mind completely. I really thought I'd lost my mind. I thought she'd somehow teleported to that side of the dam, but no, that is a different wildebeest. And yes, it apparently is the new fashion in wildebeest headgear. Long flowing locks going from one horn to the other. Ah, she's tired of her fashion accessory. Now that all the other wildebeest are doing it, it's no longer cool. Well spotted, Tebs. I didn't even see her. You crazy creatures. Who would have guessed it? Ah, there's our lady again. Jerry's made a very good point. Jerry thinks that all the little baby wildebeests are jealous and they can't wait for their horns to grow so that they can join in the trend. I like that. That is really well and truly wrapped around her horn. She will be able to get rid of it, and all she really has to do is have a roll on the ground, as that other female did. So it's not like it's stuck on her. Darling, you look fabulous, but all the other wildebeests are going to start copying you. There we go, investigating. Not so sure. Here comes another curious wildebeest. I love it. Where did you get it? Where can I get one? Wandering straight off to go and find one so that they can be part of the trend.